You're listening to Rewilding Humanity, the podcast for those who've walked through the fire and came back with medicine. I'm Krysta, artist, plant alchemist, and a woman initiated by illness, grief, and spirit. Here, we rise from collapse, reclaim our wild, and remember who the hell we are. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode on season 3, where I'm interviewing someone. If you've made it through the past 3 episodes of my Resurrection trilogy, this is the perfect segue into meeting today's guest. I think this is the first time that Keegan has told this story, and it's a really big deal. We both nearly died after plant medicine journeys, and now we're building a new kind of medicine together. And both of our experiences actually brought us together. So this episode contains some sensitive material, but it's our intention to share this with love and integrity. And I'm also going to be bringing up some fairly graphic images of both of us. And I've decided to do this because I think it's really important that people see what really happened, right? Like, we can talk about it and you can get an idea, but like seeing it, it brings it to a whole other level. So I encourage you to watch this episode on Spotify. We're able to have video on that platform. And yeah, at the end, we really just want to invite a conversation around this too. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, Keegan.
Thank you for having me. Feels so special to be your first guest.
Yeah, I know. It's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And you're a huge pivotal part in this podcast relaunching too. So thank you for that. I really feel like I needed that support and that push, and it feels like a team effort now, which feels really good.
Super grateful to be here and really proud of you that you're back in front of the mic and you're sharing these stories, and I get to be a part of it.
Yeah, I know. Just a couple of months ago, I was still like, oh, I don't know. Like, my system wasn't quite there yet, but once I got into it, got my story out, it's just like been a huge shift for me.
Yeah. What was the fear? Was it the sense of being judged, or was it?
No, not at all. No, I wasn't ready, like, just physically, right? Like, my energy was still, there was a lot going on. And I was worried about being able to keep it up just because my capacity was so greatly impacted over the past year and a half. But yeah, no, now it feels like things are back on track in a lot of ways. So it's great.
Good for you.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I just want to start with a quick intro. So let's just talk a little bit about who you are and also why you created your company, MindfulMEDS.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Keegan, the founder of MindfulMEDS. And I guess, like all of our stories, my story starts in childhood. I had, this kind of double life. I spent 10 months a year here in Canada, in Calgary. It's my hometown, and grew up in the northwest part of Calgary and had a lot of stability under my mom's roof. And dinner at the family dinner at the kitchen table most nights of the week. And then in the summer, every single summer from the time that I was 6 years old to the time I was 19, my sister and I went to the UK to spend the summer with my dad. And it was a very different way of living. My father was an incredible guy. He spent his entire career working in the mental health field. He was building social programs for the underdogs, particularly with homelessness, mental health issues, drug addiction. But my dad himself had a drinking problem. So he was an alcoholic, and he didn't drink during the day, But during the evenings, there was a lot of walking on eggshells. There was a lot of, that was scary, to be honest. I was fearful of my dad. He was quite a big presence, literally 6'6", wore a cowboy hat. He went through a lot as a kid. He was a runaway, had 5 sisters. He was the oldest of 5 sisters, grew up in Ireland, and he was sexually abused by somebody in the family, him
Mm.
and another one of my aunts. And he was beaten to pieces by his dad. When he was 14 years old, he ran away from home and lived on the streets of London until he was 18. He ended up getting saved by this couple that invited him into their home. The one contingency was they were a religious couple that my dad had to go back and graduate high school because at that time he'd only had a grade 8 education. And so it failed a couple times. They had to kick him out a couple times because he can never follow the rules, which is maybe something that he passed along to me in some ways. But the truth is he was a guy that had a heart of gold that was just never really able to get on top of his own trauma. My life as a kid went tremendously well from grade 8 till the time I was about 22 years old. I wouldn't have traded my life with absolutely anybody. I had friends that were signing NHL contracts. I had friends that were in the modeling industry. I had friends that were way smarter than I was, probably way better looking than I was, more athletic. And I loved who I was. I loved the person that I was becoming. I was proud of myself. I was proud of the guy that was brushing his teeth at night and looking at himself in the mirror. And then all of a sudden, one day things shifted. It was my 3rd year of university. I was taking business school. It was always my dream to go to university. And I never thought that I was smart enough to go to university because when I was 6, I got diagnosed with a learning disability and I carried that weight of feeling stupid for much of my life until I actually went back to school and started learning about classes that I actually was interested in. So business and entrepreneurship. But there was one night that ultimately changed my life. I made a massive mistake and ended up cheating on my girlfriend, having a one-night stand on my girlfriend in university. And honestly, never saw myself as being that person. I thought I was better than that. And that betrayal led to my first ever pocket of real severe depression, real severe anxiety. And yeah, the Christmas going into 2008, ended up dropping out of university and masking the pain with alcohol. It started pretty innocently. I, at that point, was never the guy that would drink outside of a weekend. Ultimately, that Christmas, I dropped out of university in February. That summer, I ended up taking a job in New York City. I got hired the previous summer, the old version of me, the proud version of me. And the version that showed up in New York City, I remember taking a flight to New York from Vancouver and sitting on the plane and looking at the back of all these heads and realizing, oh my God, I would trade my life with anybody on this plane, anybody but me. And really just having this thought. So I went from this guy that loved himself to this guy that would have traded his life with absolutely anybody. And I think that's quite important because my journey with addiction was just beginning. And I was in so much pain. I remember getting to New York and at that point, I think I was drinking for 4 or 5 months straight. Ultimately, my journey to mindful meds, there's one moment that I'm going to share with you and then flip it back to you. But I remember being on the rooftop of this New York City 29-story building. And we had gone up to the rooftop many times to go up and celebrate, smoke cigars and drink champagne. It was supposed to be a super fun summer. But one night I found myself at the top of this rooftop on my own and intoxicated. And I walked over to the edge, to the railing, and I bent over, had my waist just like completely tilted over to the ground. And I could see all of this garbage on the ground in New York City. There was a garbage strike in New York that summer. And my mom and stepdad, Glenn, who's basically my second dad, they've been together for almost 35, 36 years, maybe even 37. So he's been a massive part of my life. But they were on a trip to Fiji, and my mom had been waiting for this trip since she was 20 to go back. And I just realized that they were going to have to leave that trip and come and peel my dead body off the ground. And I knew that's super dramatic, but the truth is that's just gives you an idea as to how quickly things can in your life. And so that's where it began.
Yeah. And so really you found this purpose in wanting to work with psychedelics, with mushrooms, because you knew about the science, or like, tell me a little bit about that part.
Honestly, yeah, that's a super good question. And so years went on. I struggled for the next 9 years. I was still able to work. I was still able to go to the gym, but I was just like, where my heart was just, it was broken, to be honest with you. And I was, at that point, I was 23. By the time I got to rehab, I was 31 years old. And at that point, things had really shifted with the drinking. I was the first guy at the liquor store at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was the last guy at the liquor store at 11 o'clock almost every day. I would go through extreme withdrawals. I had withdrawals to the point where I had tried quitting drinking so many times and given it so much effort. And I'd get a couple days and sometimes I'd get a week, but the withdrawals were so bad that it always brought me to it and back to it. I ended up getting blessed to go to rehab. And the rehab facility that I went to was completely based around mindfulness, breathwork, yoga, meditation, art therapy, music therapy, incredible food, mother nature, and of course, comprehensive therapy, like group therapy, all sorts of different therapies. And I was really lucky because at that time I was $70,000 in debt. I had $28 to my name in my checking account. So there was no way I could have gone to a facility like this. My parents gave me the gift of going to this particular rehab facility. There's one moment that changed my life. I was terrified, freaking terrified to go in. I was so scared of the judgments. I thought no one's ever going to want to work with me again. I was going to be looked at differently. And I was really fearful. And I think that was a big part of what took me so long to get into rehab was the fear of judgment, the fear of what other people think about me. And honestly, I wish I went way sooner. But there was this moment at the end, 28 days into this program, I was leaving the next day and I was with this group of people. There was 30 people in there, male, female, from the age range from 20 to 85 years old. And it was this huge dynamic of people and we all became friends because like, honestly, you're in there with this group of people 16 hours a day, unpacking all of the heavy stuff that you've never, ever talked about in your entire life. And now you're all connected on a level that you're probably closer at some capacity that you were with your own family. My sisters didn't know half the shit that I was sharing with these people. And I was just trying to reverse engineer how I got there so that I could try to give myself the best chance at living an alcohol-free life. The director of this facility, right before we left, sat us all down in this massive circle. And she sat in the middle of the circle and she asked us all to grab a seat. And I was literally thinking that I was going to get this pat on the ass and just get sent back into the world. And it was going to be like this coaching pep talk. And it wasn't that at all. She said, look to the person to the left of you. And so we all looked at the person, we're making eye contact and we're all smiling. She goes, that person's dead in 365 days or less. And I can tell you the air, the wind, the energy was completely sucked out. Many of us started crying. It's actually very emotional. Still to this day, sharing this story makes me tear up a little bit. But then she goes, look to the person to your right. And so we all went to the person to the right. And we're all kind of thinking, oh, fuck, what's this going to be? And she goes, that person's back in one of these facilities in less than 365 days. In that moment, I decided that I was going to figure out how am I going to make an impact to that community? How am I going to help share my story and bring my skills to help make a difference to those numbers? I had no idea what that was going to look like. I got out of rehab and the journey began. Half the people that I was in there with have all passed away. I was just literally looking at my Instagram following the other day, the ones that I follow. And literally 2 days ago, leaving my trip from Reykjavik back to Calgary on Monday, that morning I had like an hour in the hotel and I started to clear out some of my followers, the ones that I was following. I came across 2 people from rehab that really made an impact on my life. They're dead and I still was following them on Instagram. And I just thought it was an important piece to bring to this conversation. That is the reason that I'm doing the work that I'm doing today. My life ended up getting significantly better. I was able to go through a pretty significant rebuild financially, had some big opportunities as time went on fall into my lap. But then I was really close to a relapse. I had not had a drink in 3.5 years, but things got really stressful in my life again. I was way over my head with the new business that I was running. Really was not qualified to be doing that, but just gave it my best effort. A lot of money involved, a lot of people involved. And I was getting severe anxiety driving to my office every morning. And I realized that I was just so far out of alignment. It was at that moment, literally, that a mushroom farmer walked into my life. That's exactly what happened. This guy showed up to do some work on the office that we had. And the guy showed up and he was a mushroom farmer and he started talking about how he wanted to save the world with mushrooms. This is October 2019. And that's how it began. He gave me some mushrooms. And 13 days later, I had this incredible aha moment where I was just like, wow, there's something to this. And that's when we decided to put the self-funded microdosing study together. And the rest is history.
Yeah, that's such an amazing story. And I know there's so much more to it. You have gone through so much, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it's like you just got hit with a round two recently, right? Yeah, it's been a lot, but there's so much purpose in all of this. It's like we go through these really brutal, painful experiences. And if you're lucky, the universe points you in the direction that you're supposed to go in. And this is so much that story. What I love about Mindful Meds, and I probably should have mentioned this before you dug into your story, but company just has so much integrity, right? And you yourself have a lot of integrity, which is super important for me. That's why I was totally game to step into this company. And community is such a big part too. Community and education, a lot of integration work as well. And the products are around microdosing, right? Like we're not promoting big medicine journeys, although both of you and I have partaken in a lot of those. And we'll be digging into that in this episode. But yeah, what like the energy that I get from you is like the big brother that wants to help everybody,
Thank you.
right? Yeah, that's really what I see. And you are such a potent leader too. Yeah.
Oh, that means so much to me. So much to unpack here. But I'll start with this. When I started researching about mushrooms in 2019, my heart was so excited. I am telling you that I had never felt this level of excitement in my entire life. It was almost like I had found and unlocked the key to my future. And I know that sounds insane, but anybody that's ever walked into their purpose before can relate to this, at least I hope, because I'd never felt this ever in my entire life. I was 35 years old and had never, ever felt so inspired. And so, yeah, we've been on this mission to bring the safest, the most consistent, and the highest vibrational mushroom frequency medicine to the world for the past 5 years. And yeah, it started in my apartment and downtown Calgary. And it was just an idea, but I could see where it was going to go. And it was a self-funded citizen science project, essentially. And the reason that I did it was because I just wanted to really know how this medicine worked on other people. I had a profound experience on my side, which I know we don't like, maybe we'll do a round two and I'll share a bit more detail around that, but I needed to buy myself some time. I needed to understand what it is that we were walking into. You have to understand that in 2019, there was no other microdosing companies. There was nobody to follow. There was nobody to emulate. There was no leaders in the industry. The companies that were out there, I'm sure it had a great product, but the truth is it looked very gray market and kind of sketchy in most cases. And that's not something that I thought that I wanted to be a part of. We put the study together. We got 40 people that had never microdosed before, and they filled out a questionnaire. It was 13 questions, and we were trying to get a baseline evaluation as to where people were, where their mental health was at, where their anxiety levels were at, where their depression levels were at, where their creativity levels were at, where their mood was at. I really wanted to know. And so I teamed up with somebody that had a background in psychology, and we together put this questionnaire together. I provided the medicine, and I brought in 40 people. I thought this was going to take some time to fill. It filled within 24 hours. So you know that there was a huge need, there was a huge interest, much more than I anticipated. And at the end of the 6 weeks, all of us got into a Slack channel. So we were communicating together. Everybody was checking in on one another. We were getting an idea as to how everybody was doing. But at the end, we had everybody fill out the exact same questionnaire. And this study, it was a huge undertaking. I didn't really know how much of an effort this was going to take, but it was a huge amount of work. And at the end of it, we hired a company to tally the data. And the way the needle moved in these 40 people's lives, still to this day, I've never seen anything like it before. The before and after questionnaires had completely shifted. Over 70% of the people had a profoundly massive shift in their mental health. And one person of the 40 came together. She filmed a 45-minute testimonial. I've never released it, but I'm allowed to, so I can share this. She came forward. She was my age, 35. She had been in and out of therapy since she was 14, tried everything, already had her suicide planned out, where she was going to do it, when she was going to do it, what she was going to wear. She was in the process of writing her final words. And she came forward and said that the study saved her life. That ultimately was what I needed, the fire in my belly, because I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I was stepping into something that I'd never done before and dealing with something that is not still in the gray market. So I had no experience with that. Anyways, long story short, that was the fire that I needed to bring this forward. I thought it was important to share that.
Yeah, no, that is incredibly important. And just to reiterate, these were microdoses people were being given, right? Okay. So now I want to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about macro doses. So these are big doses. People call them medicine journeys. It's become very trendy lately. There's lots of different medicines out there, from mushrooms to ayahuasca to iboga, wishuma. There's a bunch of them. And you had a pretty profound experience. When was this?
It would have been the spring of 2023.
So this is so crazy because Keegan and I both went through our death rebirth portals at the same time, which is bizarre. So that was literally the same time frame when my business started going under. And I think you were starting to enter your recovery phase right as everything really peaked for me. And I was like at my worst. You were at your worst at that time too. And then things started to progress. So this is just so bizarre. Like, so many layers of this story, you guys, is just like, okay, clearly you guys were meant to meet, right? And we're going to unpack that.
Yeah.
But what we'll start with is your experience. So first of all, like, what was going on in your life that made you say yes to doing this journey, right? Because you already had the support with the microdosing, and what was bringing you to wanting to do like these macrodose experiences in these group settings?
Yeah. So I ended up staying off the alcohol for 5.5 years. And I had said to my now wife and my family that I was going to get to the 5-year mark, and then I wanted to try to re-explore it. And so I got to the 5-year mark, got to the 5.5-year mark. Elise and I went down to Mexico. We were down there for 17, 18 days. And on the last day of the trip, I had a beer. And it was like, it was no big deal. But the reality is I did. And so to answer your question, I had a brief pocket of time where I started to re-explore alcohol for about 9 months. And the first 6 of those months went pretty good. And then the last 3 months went horrifically bad. And so at the time that I had done this journey, and I've never spoken about this, by the way. This is the very first time that I've ever spoken about this pocket of time. I don't even know if you know this. And so I ended up worried because like things were starting to trend the right way and like things were taking off and business wise, career wise, we were starting to make some strides as a couple. And then I started to re-explore drinking. And the last 3 months of it, as I said, were not pretty. And I found myself at the liquor store one day at a really not a good time of day. And there was a day that I found myself on a podcast like this, and I had 4 beers before it. And I was just like, fuck, where's my life going? There's no way that's. So I ended up just after that, I called a rehab facility in Vancouver on my own. Nobody pushed me into this. My wife didn't even think I needed to go, but I knew I had to go. I knew I had a lot to lose. So that was on a Friday, and on Monday I showed up at this rehab facility, started another 28-day stint. This was a very different experience than the first one. But to answer your question, I went through that. I got out. I had been at that point off the alcohol for about 3 or 4 months, but it was still early. Now it's been over 800 days without a drink again. I realized that there was still a lot of internal healing. There was a lot of stuff that was probably stuff deep down inside that needed to be addressed. And so I started this journey. I started working with a therapist back in Vernon. Wonderful human being, expert on PTSD, she went through a massive addiction with pain medication, came out the other side. So somebody that really inspired me. So I had just finished 20 sessions with her. And then she's also a trained master's level therapist that uses plant medicine as well. And so I ended up doing basically a DMT journey with her. And this part's pretty important because I don't know the role that this actually played in all of this, but I know it's significant because this was on a Friday. She came to my place on a Friday. 7 days later, I went into a mushroom ceremony that was a path. But that Friday, I had basically hit a waterline, and I had never poured tears like this in my entire life. So my system was just flushing out some sort of blockage. And then on that Monday, I got invited to go to this journey and really didn't feel very good about it. I just instantly just had one of those icky feelings. And that's certainly been the case with me. I've been very actively trying to become the best version of myself that I could possibly be. And along the way, I certainly take many steps backwards and figured out how to move forward. But so there was that piece. And on that Monday, I got invited to go to the journey, and Elisa had her bridal shower.
That's your partner.
That's my wife. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so we were due to get married in July of 2023. And she was away for that weekend. And I was like still a little apprehensive about being on my own because I didn't want to drink again. And it just seemed like it was still like one of those, it was a tender time. For me, it took me to get to the kind of that 1 year mark again before I was like super confident to be around it and with no fear. Anyways, I said yes to this journey. I think it's also important to note that the whole reason I'm sharing this story is all we want to do is help people, right? Like all we want to do is make sure that nobody walks into this that could be in a similar situation, and maybe some things to look out for, some vetting processes. And I ultimately just wanted to share, my nervous system was not in a place that I ever should have been doing a big mushroom journey, especially 7 days after the DMT ceremony.
Yeah.
And because of the alcohol, I had some underlying health issues. And so it's important to mention that as well. Mm-hmm. I'm a type 1 diabetic. So I've had issues with my pancreas, right? My pancreas is not producing the insulin like the average person. So a lot of insulin 4 times a day. And that's because of the alcohol use. So it just gives you an idea of the level of the addiction. I had pockets of time during that year where I would go 3 days with severe stomach pain to the point where it was debilitating. And then I'd have a month where I could eat anything I wanted again. And I'd no stomach pain, no issues. But I went into this journey And it was during a time of those 27 days where I was fine. I would have gone. And yeah, honestly, there's life before this journey and there's life after.
So you mentioned that you were feeling trepidatious about entering this space. Were you feeling pressured at all? Like, were there any questionnaires that were given to you to assess your current situation at all?
Yeah. So really good question. So yes, on the intuition, I think that's one of the greatest lessons that have come out of this for me is learning how to listen to that compass. And I've had issues with that in the past where like, if you're like me and you like to learn your lessons the absolute hardest way possible, but if you're not like me and you're somebody that's calculated and wants to ease your way into situations like this, stick around for this conversation because we're going to give some tips and some ideas as to how to navigate this. Right. And so, yes, there was a bit of peer pressure. I'm not putting any blame on anybody for this. I ultimately went to this journey. And so I wear that. But yes, there was some pressure. And honestly, I've had to sit and replay every fucking conversation that I had with this person because I had a lot of time on my hands. This story leads to me ending up in the hospital for 11 days and having to move my wedding and then having a life-saving surgery about 6 months later. Walked into this journey somewhat healthy, but I can't even explain to you how uncomfortable I felt going into this. There was a roundabout on the way to this person's house. And I went through the roundabout 3 or 4 times and I was about to spit myself out and go home. And of course I didn't. So
Yeah.
where it starts.
Yeah. I would have mentioned that, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before. I got sick. I can't remember the episode name, but I believe it was with the Journeyman. So I have also engaged in the plant medicine quote unquote journey. I don't even want to call it that because it's just, it's not, it wasn't facilitated correctly with the same people. And I ended up with some energetic interference after that. Thankfully, I had support and they were able to clear that for me, but I was like pretty fucked up for a couple of weeks afterwards. I do have some experts that are going to be coming on later to talk about that because there is this whole there's this whole other world to plant medicine that people don't understand. And I know that after I had done that journey and like cleared stuff, the shaman who helped me, she was like channeling like my guides at the time. And they were like, yo, like you need to be a voice around this. Like people aren't utilizing these medicines correctly. And they straight up told me, they're like, microdose is great and in cycles, but like these big hero doses, and yes, some people have had transformation and whatever, but it's like, oh, there's a huge aspect of playing with fire when you are not in a space with somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing. And that was definitely the case for both of us, I think.
Yeah. So while this is where the story
Yeah,
could be a fucking 6-part Netflix, to be honest.
it's wild. Yeah,
I want to spend
let's get into
most of the time there talking about the exciting stuff, but it is important to chat about. So halfway through my journey that night, I was having full liftoff. I will say that my particular journey was rather challenging. I had a lot of anger come up in my system during the journey that I didn't even really know existed within me. And it was just like this replay of all of these dramatic events that had happened in my life. And it was really hard to sit through, to be honest. But at the end of it, halfway through, I had the most prolific stomach pain that I had ever felt in my entire life. And it was like being stabbed in the stomach. My case and my story, Krysta's story, it's not the norm. So my intention was not to scare anybody out of pursuing this medicine, but we want to educate people on how to do it the right way in a safe way. That's the intention. Yeah. I just remember being in so much pain throughout the night. It was a nighttime journey and getting up dozens of times to try to get to the bathroom. And use the toilet. I struggled so hard because I was so incredibly high that I was up and I was down and I was up and I was down. I was in so much pain. And at the end of it, everybody comes together and starts to share some of their experiences if they want to. The sun's now up.
Mhm.
And I just remember being in so much pain, I could barely speak. And I ended up driving home that morning. No way I should have driven home, but I needed to get home.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
after New Year's to get home. Really, this was the beginning of what would become a year and a half long health struggle, and one that I'm grateful to be on the other side of. But truthfully, it was a really scary 18 months. It started with this blockage. So I had so much pain in my stomach. I never, from that moment, from that event forward, I never had another healthy bowel movement ever again. So whatever was going on in my stomach was there. I didn't know it at the time, but I later discovered there was a blockage in my stomach. And for a couple months, I was just looking at this going, hey, I've been here before. I've had this stomach pain in the past, but now it's not going away. And now I can't even pass a bowel movement. So there was something there that was very different than any of the other health struggles that I had ever had leading up to that. And so all of a sudden now it's June. I had been sick for a couple months. I've been off work for a couple months. I had a doctor multiple times. I ended up getting, I guess I didn't get on pain meds until I went to the hospital. And so I struggled on and off. And then finally, it was at the point where I had to go to the emergency room. And I ended up, and by the way, June is 60 days before I got to the emergency room. I was in so much pain. I could barely eat. I could barely keep anything in my stomach. I started to whittle away. I went from being really quite healthy to being a speck of that version of me. And yeah, I got into the hospital. They ran a bunch of scans and they found a blockage in my colon. I was supposed to get married less than a month after this. And I realized right away that wasn't going to happen. So once I got into the hospital, they had said, I think there's a chance that we can move this blockage out of your system by putting you on a liquid diet. And so they admitted me to the hospital. It was COVID time still. And it was a very different time for the healthcare services. The nurses were overworked. The doctors were overworked. So not the best time to be in a hospital for 11 days, just because you could feel that, right? You could feel that everybody was struggling. And so I went for 11 days. They tried to put me on this liquid diet. At the end of it, I was still in the exact same position. The surgeon came in, basically said, I've got the recorded phone call. I've got all the literature from my entire health journey. He said, I think we need to get in there and have a surgery. And he said, there's about a 5 to 10% chance that you'll be left with a stoma bag attached to your stomach for the rest of your life. And I remember sitting in that room with my mom, my dad, my sister, Elisa, and we put this thing on a scale. And it was just like, I recorded the call because we know a lot of healers in the Okanagan. And I wanted to share what he had said with some of those alternative healers. And so I opted to leave the hospital. I said no to the surgery. So yeah, late June, maybe early July at this stage. I can't remember exactly when it was, but that pocket of time. And I started to really pursue alternative medicine to try to get my health back. And it was a pretty serious commitment. Like I was in the clinic multiple times a week for months upon months. I was doing acupuncture. I was changing my diet. Was doing all sorts of energy work, body talk, all the things. And I tried that for as long as I possibly could.
How long was it that you were doing?
Yeah. So I ultimately ended up back in the hospital 6 months later.
The first 6 months.
Yeah.
Doing these. Right. Okay. I also want to mention, and so we didn't know this until we met after and we were talking, but we were actually seeing the same alternative healthcare practitioner probably around the same time. And both of our health was like declining significantly. Yeah. So just something interesting to note.
Totally. But yeah, in the end, I my stomach was so bloated that I looked pregnant. So I literally looked. If you've ever seen a photo of a child in Africa where their stomach looks balloons, essentially, that's what happened to my stomach. And I was trying everything. Like I was still trying to work. I was still trying to be a part of because I like for so many months I was on the couch at my house and all I was drinking was broth and maybe just completely plain oatmeal. And my diet had completely changed. That was a really challenging pocket of time. But we were going into Christmas just before 2024. And I looked at Elisa and I said, we got to go back. And we ended up driving to Kelowna this time. And I walked into the emergency room. They did all the scans. And within about an hour, a team of doctors came flying out to talk to us. And they said, we got to get you in for surgery now. Agreed to the surgery this time around. I knew there was no other option. Super scary because you don't know what's on the other side of this. You don't know what your life is going to look like on the other side of this type of a surgery. And I was absolutely petrified and went into the surgery. I was really blessed that some of the best surgeons in the country worked out of the Kelowna Hospital. My surgery was extraordinarily challenging. It started out having my case was passed from one professional to another professional, ultimately to a third person that had the most experience with this. But I have the report. And it was a very complicated surgery. What had happened was the tail and complicated to the point where they had never, ever seen this before. Okay. So what ended up happening was there was 9 pounds of liquid stool in my 9 pounds of liquid stool
Jesus.
that was choked off. And what happened was the tail of my pancreas wrapped around my intestine, my small intestine, and completely choked it off to the point where I don't want to be dramatic, but like the truth is I was probably days away from my stomach exploding and sepsis and
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah.
They had said that if I didn't get there that day, I was going to die. So I don't want to say this was a near death experience because my heart didn't stop, but this is as close to death that I ever want to get to until the end.
Okay. I'm going to pull up photos here in a second because I want people to see this, because this is also the moment that kind of started our connection. But I just want to clarify something. So, like, during these 6 months, as you were getting sicker and sicker, like, what were the recommendations with the alternative healthcare practitioner? Was it like, oh, we can get through this? Or like, at any time, was it like, oh, this is really getting really bad, you need a surgery?
So that was never said to me, but I don't want to place blame on anybody because I made the decision that I wanted to pursue the alternative health portion,
Totally. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I had an opportunity to have the surgery, but the truth that this team of people thought that there was strong hope that
Yeah.
I could pass this blockage without the surgery. So I went and attempted to go down that route for a while.
Well, and I get it, right? And this isn't to pass blame, but it's just interesting because with my journey and what I've been through, I was very much for a long time like, fuck pharma, fuck Western medicine. And there's still alignment there, but I take such a much more balanced approach to things now. And I would have fucking died if I hadn't gone to the hospital. And like the same healthcare practitioner was urging me not to take any medication, and that I was at like this crossroads if I was going to start taking this medication. And so there was like a lot of guilt and shame around taking medication. And ultimately, that's the thing that saved me because I was going to fucking kill myself. And you had to go that route too. So I think it's just really important to have these conversations, but like sometimes you need the other side, right? And as long as you're mindful about it and as long as you're not using medication as a crutch for like the rest of your life, I have started going off that medication as soon as my body was able to handle it. Yeah, I think we're learning a lot of lessons, and that layer of discernment is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. It was 6 months later. I ended up having the surgery. I woke up the next morning. It was pretty scary. It was a very long surgery. They thought it was only going to take a couple hours. It took, I think, 4 times that amount of time. And then Elisa was there for those extra 6 hours, not knowing what had happened and not knowing if she was ever going to see me again. It must have been extraordinarily traumatic for her. I woke up the next day. I had a stoma bag attached to my stomach. The surgery was successful. And now the journey of recovery was just beginning.
Let me pull up some images. So, yeah, I just want people to see the reality of what happened to both of us. This was the image that you had shared on Instagram. I think you had just gotten out of the hospital, and
When I was in there,
I was bedridden at this time. So I think this was this around like January of 2024?
I
Yeah.
spent the first 11 days in the hospital of 2024.
If you guys listen to, I think it's episode 2, it's where my body had just gone into this full lockdown freak out thing where I was like gagging and yawning at like my whole system had just gone absolutely fucking berserk. And that was really like the culmination of everything for me. These are just like, I saw these images and I reached out to you on Instagram. So we had been following each other for a little while, but hadn't formally met. And when I saw these photos, I was like, I got to reach out because something inside of me just felt like, holy shit, somebody else is going through something really difficult. And that was when I reached out to you on Instagram and was just like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry you went through this and are going through this. And I just want to let you know that I'm going through something really hard too. And I appreciate you sharing this. Like, as clearly fucking difficult as this looked. Like, what was going through your mind in this image here?
Grateful to be alive, really scared of what the future looked like. I navigating the stoma bag. At the time, it was something that was really heavy for me to carry. And I didn't find out that this was going to reverse until about 60 days after this. So this was me slipping into what would later become the deepest, darkest depression that I'd ever experienced.
Well, that's what it looks like to me. Like, your eyes are just like,
Yeah.
it's just pure agony and sadness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this is you. So you sent me a couple of videos this morning. So this was right after the surgery?
Yeah. I'm still in the hospital. I think this is, maybe a couple days after because I'm walking. It took a couple days to be able to take any steps, but I'm just inching around the hospital.
Yeah.
And super high on probably
Morphine.
painkillers. I don't think I would have had the kahunas to film this without that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Is it okay if I play it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, if you're sensitive, I do show the stoma bag in this. So
Is it in this one or there's another one?
I think it's in this one because I take my shirt off.
Okay.
Everybody, it's Keegan here from the Kelowna General Hospital. Just wanted to check in and say hello and send my love to everybody over the Christmas season. It is December 28th. Just over a week ago, I came in with enormous pain in my stomach and I resulted in a major surgery. I ended up having 50% of my colon removed. And I just wanted to share where my weight is at, a couple other things about the wedding coming up. So I'm going to hop on this table. And as it says right here, I am now 6'2", 156 pounds. And I'm actually going to take this one off so you guys can see what I look like as well. You'll just see. I've got my friends with me. My mother-in-law, Regina's here. Lisa's with me. So this is my new life right now. This is where I'm passing school. Our wedding date has been moved to June. And so every once in a while, I'm going to be checking in and just sharing some updates. But that's the update for now. Thank you for everybody that's been thinking about me, sending their love, their thoughts, and their prayers. I cannot tell you how much that means to me. and I'm receiving it and sending it anytime. So, thank you guys. Hope everybody has a marvelous New Year's ahead, and sending a lot to love. And we'll see you all soon.
Aw. So all of that, I don't know, just for you to be in that space of like gratitude and worrying about other people while you're in this state, it just says so much about your character. And yeah, this is just so powerful and so heartbreaking. So I'm going to pull up some images of myself during this time too. And it's weird because I haven't really looked at anything since it happened. And I'm scrolling through these images and I'm just like, holy shit. Like these memories come flooding back. But I was also looking at my life prior to getting sick. And I'm just like, I don't feel like the same person anymore. I know we're just getting into the thick of it, but I'm going to pause here because this next part deserves its own space. Part 2 of my conversation with Keegan drops next week. We're diving even deeper into the aftermath of everything you've just heard, the realities of the healing industry, and how we're moving forward together. So thank you for sticking with us, and I'll see you next week for the rest of the story. If this episode cracked you open, good. Share it far and wide so we can reach more people who are done pretending and ready to come home to themselves. To dive deeper into my world, explore Wildcrafted Apothecary and Sacred Art at magicmaven.com. Discover new tools for nervous system healing at mindfulmeds.io and Alchemy. Or bring your vision to life with me at the Brand Bruja. All the links and more are waiting for you in the show notes. Until next time, stay wild, stay rooted, and remember, you were made for this.